Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope you are doing well. It's Monday again. Here we go. Looking forward to our 9-minute Monday, and I want to expand our conversation. We started a conversation last week about priorities, and I want to kind of dig into that a little bit more. I had the privilege last week of speaking at a conference in the Northeast, Collide one day, and we were talking about the high impact leader, using a lot of the conversation that Carey Nieuwhof talks about of the high impact leader. And I was able to specifically talk about this issue of priorities and how do we set priorities that help us really have the impact that we want to have as leaders. You guys know that I talk a lot about the extraordinary leader, that I think as leaders, we have the potential to kind of understand what it means to lead well and to do that in a way that really serves the people we lead well. And one of those things is really devoting ourselves to defining the priorities that help us succeed. So I'm going to dig into that today and specifically talk about 5 principles for prioritizing well. Because I think if I asked each of you to define your priorities, you would tell me the correct priorities. You would tell me that your relationship with God, you would tell me the relationships with your family, that those things are really important to who you are and to leading well. You would say all of that. You would then tell me that taking care of yourself is important, and understanding how you're energized and engaged and understanding how you're wired, etc. You would also tell me that understanding organizational priorities and helping set goals for your team, you would say all of those things are important. So it's not that we don't understand how to prioritize, but sometimes we need a little bit of help in figuring out how to do this well. Because if you're anything like me, there are a zillion things competing for your attention every single day. Am I right? And for those of you in church ministry, this is Easter week, so you're especially feeling the chaos of what in the 4 disciplines of execution in that book they call the whirlwind, right? McChesney calls it the whirlwind that we live in. And that's a real reality for leaders, is that there are so many things going on. There's so many things fighting for our attention day in and day out. So how do we prioritize well? So I want to give you 5 principles today to just get you thinking, to help you be intentional in prioritizing well. And the first one is one you've heard me say a lot: you lead you, or lead yourself well. You hear me say all the time, lead yourself well to lead others better. That's one of the things we deeply believe in at Foresight, is that we have to really understand what it means to lead ourselves well. So you lead you. No one else is going to do this for you. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons we need to learn early in our leadership, that even if we sit whatever rung of the organizational structure we sit in, that we still have to be disciplined to lead ourselves well. And if we can get this right, it's going to serve us well no matter what seat of leadership we're in. And it's really the essence of self-leadership. No one else other than God cares about the whole you, about all of who you are, all the things that make up who you are, all the things that you need to navigate when you're determining your priorities. See, everyone else is competing for your time, right? Those of you who lead teams of staff or volunteers, everybody else is pulling on you and tugging at you for everything they need. So they're competing for your time. And their own interest is greater than yours in their mind, right? And it's not that they're selfish, it's just our nature, right? When we need something from somebody else, we're going to be pulling and tugging on them to get what we need. So you've got to be intentional and understand what you need to lead yourself well. And that truth is that no one else is going to do this for you, so you need to own it. I love what Dr. Henry Cloud often says. He says, you are ridiculously in charge. You are ridiculously in charge. And yes, we have responsibilities and we're accountable to the people that we are under the authority of. But at the end of the day, we can kind of take that into consideration, and we can define, how do I lead myself well with all the competing priorities to make sure that I can keep leading well for the long haul. So that's the first one, you lead you. The second one is be proactive, not reactive. And this is the one that can get us in trouble a lot of times, because again, that tyranny of the urgent, you've heard that phrase, I'm sure, a number of times, that tyranny of the urgent causes us to simply react to now, react to what's in front of us. So as a leader, you've got to remember that you and your team need your best time and energy. And so you've got to fight to be proactive rather than reactive. Everyone needs you working on the most important things, not the most urgent things. If you remember from last week's conversation, I talked about when I was on church staff and it was like the week or two before Easter, and I was not crazy busy. And at first I felt incredibly guilty for that because I thought, gosh, everybody else is running around with their hair on fire. I should be too. But the reality is I was actually leading from a healthy place in that season, and that I had gotten myself ahead of the game and had prepared the way for all of the Easter details. And now my staff were kind of following in that wake and doing what they needed to do to help us have an amazing Easter weekend. And so it was kind of that aha moment that while it felt counterintuitive, I actually had been proactive, gotten ahead of my responsibilities, had set my priorities well, and as a result, it made way for my team to do what they needed to do, and we had an amazing weekend. So be proactive, not reactive. You have to fight for that. You guys have heard about like the 4 quadrants of, the urgent and the important, and you've got to make sure that you're living in that important quadrant, not the urgent quadrant. Now, there are going to be urgents that come up from time to time, but they need to be the exception, not the norm. So be proactive, not reactive. Number 3 is be productive, not busy. And we live in a hyper-connected world with lots of opportunities kind of coming at you, and so it's easy to be busy. But do few things rather than many things. Do the few right things rather than the many things that can be competing for your time and your attention. I think I mentioned this to you last week as well. Email is not your work. It should not be driving what you do every day. If you wake up in the morning and your email inbox is determining what you're going to do for the day, you don't have your priorities in the right order. You need to use email as a tool, but don't let it drive you, because again, that's everybody else coming at you with their expectations rather than you saying, these are the priorities that are most essential for me to work on. A way that sometimes helps me kind of measure if I'm being productive or if I'm being busy is I will make myself for a couple weeks do a time log and really pay attention to where my hours go, where my days, where my minutes, where my hours, where all of my time goes, so I can get a sense of what is kind of monopolizing my schedule. Because most of you, I'm pretty sure, are not sitting around idle, but you're ending up with a lot of things that are kind of taking over your day, and they may not be your best priorities. So discipline yourself to maybe do a time log for a week or two and get a sense of where's my time going, and am I okay with this? Are these really my priorities? And then you'll shift to creating a fixed calendar. We can talk about that in another session. But you can shift to creating a calendar that's helping you direct those priorities rather than responding to what's coming at you. Number 4 is being focused in defining your priorities. So this has kind of been woven through, but being focused of defining those priorities and then committing to them. And this is where you start to commit to, how are these priorities going to show up in my work day in and day out? What are my most important contributions? What are the things that I need to be incredibly attentive to so that these are the things that get done? One of the most simple ways that I've heard people do this, if you're like me, you've probably tried every tool under the sun of like the new planner, the new app, everything that's supposed to help you get organized and help you prioritize. And a lot of times those things end up falling flat because we haven't been focused. And then our 5th one is discipline. We'll get to that in a minute. We haven't been disciplined enough to actually work that planner or that tool. And so one of the most simple ones I've ever heard was take a Post-it note and a Sharpie, and every day when you get up, put the 3 things that are the most important things you need to accomplish that day. And I have done this on and off for years. I've gotten more disciplined this year in doing it. And it is such a incredible help for me to make sure that every time something starts to deter me and pull me away and I start to get distracted, I come back to that Post-it note with those 3 things. And it's like, no, wait, okay, this is the most important thing today. This is the most important thing I need to accomplish. So be focused. Carey Nieuwhof in his work says, decide what you need to do, decide who you need to spend your time with, and decide when you need to do it. And those three simple things, deciding what, deciding who, and deciding when, will help you clarify priorities. So that's the be focused part. And then finally, be disciplined. Not our favorite word, is it? But again, we can kind of try everything under the sun, and we can shift over here to this new thing somebody else is talking about and this new flashy app that everybody says is amazing. But the reality is we need to be disciplined, and we need to commit to something and work that tool. Most of the time, any plan will work, any tool will work if you will work that plan, if you'll work that tool. And so we have to be disciplined to choose something and commit to it. So if it's a Post-it note with a Sharpie that you put on your every day to get you started, if you start with that discipline, it is going to help you define your priorities and set you up to succeed. In Jim Collins' book, Great by Choice, he says, greatness is not primarily a function of circumstances. Greatness is a matter of conscious choice and discipline. And guys, that is what is true of a lot of leaders. And all of it comes back to the lead yourself well piece, right? That you need to lead you. You need to be proactive, not reactive, productive, not busy, focused, and disciplined. And if you follow those 5 principles, it is going to help you continue to lead well, to define the priorities that are essential to help you and your team succeed. So stay the course, keep leading well, choose one of those principles this week. Don't even have to choose all 5 of them. Choose one of them to focus on this week and see if that helps move the dial. For my church leaders, being Easter week, we're praying for you guys, encouraging you, supporting you. Thank you for creating an opportunity where people can come and hear the gospel and get connected to the hope of Jesus. And so I know it's a busy week for you guys, but keep leading well. We're so grateful for what you do. For all of you, for the different ways you lead, the different ways you serve, thank you. Be faithful, keep leading well, and we'll see you next week. Be sure to share this with a friend. And thanks for joining in. Send us your questions, and we'll see you next Monday.